Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take the world's most monumental literature, the books that have that really serious reputation, and we make them immediately accessible and insightful for you.
And honestly, few books carry a reputation heavier than Gabriel García Márquez's 1967 masterpiece, 100 Years of Solitude. It's a book it's constantly cited as one of the supreme achievements in world literature.
It just has that weight. Think about it. In 2007, it was officially recognized as one of the most important works in Spanish since Don Quixote.
Since Don Quixote, that's a title that very few books can even come close to claiming.
Exactly. And that's why we're here today. Our whole mission is to kind of cut through that massive reputation and give you the essential context you need.
Yeah, we're going to focus on three key areas. First, the intense, almost unbelievable creation story behind the manuscript itself.
Then we'll get into that pivotal debate.
Yeah.
Should you read it in Spanish or in its acclaimed English translation?
And finally, and this is the big one, how its magical realism works as this really sharp but non-overt political and social critique of Latin American history.
And to kick us off, we really have to start with the process. Garcia Marquez, GGM, he didn't just write this book.
No, he went into what you can only describe as a sustained, isolated frenzy for 14 months.
And that stress, the emotional, the financial, the mental stress he was under, it's not just some fun fact, it's totally integral to the book's central theme of solitude.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how the author's real-life struggle mirrored the fate of his own characters. The creation itself was an act of extreme, self-imposed isolation.
Okay, so let's unpack the genesis of this thing. It all starts in 1965.
Yeah.
And the origin story itself sounds like a myth.
It really does. So GGM is driving his family to Acapulco for a vacation, and all of a sudden, the complete idea for the novel just hits him.
So he literally turns the car around.
Mid-trip. The commitment was that immediate and that total. He gets home and just quits his jobs. He walked away from collaborating on film scripts, from his advertising role, everything.
He knew he had to dedicate himself entirely to this one vision.
And the sacrifice that took is just staggering. He wrote full-time for 14 straight months, from September 65 to August 66, and to keep his family afloat, he was living entirely on credit.
He was even pawning family possessions, right?
He was. The strain was just immense. His wife, Mercedes, she actually developed a stomach ulcer during that period, so it wasn't just him suffering for his art. The entire family was leveraged on this one single manuscript.
We often romanticize the idea of the struggling genius, but it makes you ask, was all this self-imposed suffering really necessary for the art?
It's a great question, because the book is so fundamentally about self-imposed isolation. He blended a movie script idea he had about a town coming to an end with a novel about a despot's solitude, and that became Macondo.
And to manage this huge narrative, this sprawling seven-generation story, he enforced this almost unnatural discipline on himself.
Right. A rigid office schedule, writing from early morning to late evening, even on weekends, all in this tiny little room.
His chaos control, wasn't it?
It had to be. He had these huge charts pinned to his wall, tracking the Buendía family genealogy and the whole history of Macondo.
Just to keep it all straight.
Yeah, because the pressure was so intense. Sources say he was chain-smoking something like 60 cigarettes a day. He even admitted he was terrified the whole time that the novel would turn out to be, and this is his word, shit.
That anxiety is so key. It feels like the charts and the schedule were the only things anchoring him against the potential failure of a story that massive.
A race against time, poverty, and his own doubt.
Okay, that focus on GGM's intense, disciplined solitude, it brings us perfectly to the reader's own experience of the book.
Yeah.
So part 2. The first question anyone asks when they pick up 100 Years of Solitude is, English or Spanish?
And that is the core debate. Now, if you are a Spanish speaker, you should know the original text uses a lot of vocabulary and a kind of old-fashioned Colombian dialect. That can be tough.
Even for native speakers from other places.
Exactly. I've heard from people who tried it and found themselves looking up words every other line. It's not a simple read.
Which makes the translation a really serious contender. Let's talk about Gregory Rabas's English version.
Rabas's translation is revered, and for good reason. GGM himself praised it so highly. Some sources even claim he thought the English version was better than his original Spanish.
Wow.
It's incredibly faithful. It preserves GGM's signature long, lyrical sentences, but it just flows beautifully for the English reader.
And yet, even in the best translation, little bits of cultural identity can get lost, can't they?
Oh, for sure. And you see it right away in maybe the most famous opening line in all of literature.
Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice.
What's so fascinating is the nuance lost in that one verb. The Spanish word GGM used is conocer, and conocer means to meet or to know or to experience for the first time.
So it's much deeper than discover. Discover sounds kind of scientific, like an objective finding.
Exactly. Conocer el hielo suggests a profound, almost cultural initiation. It's like meeting a new, strange substance for the first time. It's a small difference, but it changes the whole emotional connotation of that moment.
But the real challenge of the book, no matter what language you choose, it's not the vocabulary, it's that family tree.
That's where people get stuck.
I can imagine a lot of readers just quit right there.
Yeah.
I mean, it is chaotic. You have 22 characters named Aureliano, 5 Jose Arcadios, multiple Amaranthas and Ursulas.
And that chaos is completely by design. That naming structure is the key to the book's whole theme of historical inevitability, of cyclical repetition.
The names actually reflect their destiny then, like a kind of literary shorthand.
Precisely. GGM set up what he called a circular phenomenon, the Aurelianos. They're typically lucid and withdrawn, they turn inward, they embody that solitude.
And that Jose Arcadios.
They're impulsive and enterprising, but they're always marked by a tragic, often violent sign. So the repeated names, they aren't just there to confuse you. They symbolize the Buendia family's total failure to learn from their own past.
They're just trapped,
Right.
repeating the same traits, the same mistakes, and trapping Macondo in this endless cycle.
Exactly. Which brings us perfectly into part 3, magical realism as a form of political critique.
This book is the defining example of the genre. You have levitating beauties and flying gypsies right alongside extremely realistic political violence.
And the timing here is absolutely essential. The novel was published in 1967. Think about what was happening in Latin America then.
It was an era of coups, military dictatorships, just constant political instability.
So GGM used magical realism because it let him critique these pervasive issues, power, corruption, colonization, without, overtly attacking them. The fantastic elements gave him critical distance while still speaking a very undeniable truth.
And Macondo, the fictional town, that's the ultimate metaphor.
It's a microcosm for the entire history of Latin America, from its kind of utopian founding to its first contact with modernity, all the way to its inevitable destruction. It reflects this feeling of incomplete modernity.
That feeling that progress is always promised but never quite delivered.
Exactly. And the defining characteristic of this society is that solitude from the title.
It's a solitude that comes from post-colonial neglect and exploitation.
Yes, you see it everywhere. In Colonel Aureliano Buendia, who just retreats into his workshop to make these tiny goldfish over and over, or the patriarch, Jose Arcadio Buendia, who ends up literally tied to a chestnut tree.
The Buendias are always building walls, physical and emotional ones.
And that brings us to the family's strange, cyclical obsession with incest. That's tied to the political metaphor too, isn't it?
Absolutely. The incestuous relationships are a symbol of the family's withdrawal into a self-contained elitist world.
By only interbreeding, they're refusing to engage with the outside world. They're refusing to adapt. They're just ensuring that they repeat the same destructive cycle over and over again. It's a powerful critique of how Latin American elites have historically isolated themselves.
And this is where it gets really powerful. The magical elements are often used to process real, traumatic historical events from Colombia.
This is the core function of the whole novel. Colonel Aureliano Buendia's 32 civil wars. That's a direct reflection of the actual Thousand Days War in Colombia from 1899 to 1902.
But the most famous example has to be the depiction of the American Fruit Company and the violence that follows its arrival.
Oh yeah, the Banana Massacre. That section is based on a real event from 1928. In the novel, the American company machine guns over 3,000 striking workers.
Which mirrors the real tragedy, where striking workers were gunned down by the Colombian military, who were acting on behalf of a foreign company.
Right. And this is where the magical realism is deployed so brilliantly. It's not just to convey the violence, but the denial of that violence afterwards.
The cover-up.
Precisely. The government and the company deny the event ever happened. They issue decrees that claim the workers did not exist. They magically erase history itself.
And the sole survivor, Jose Arcadio II, is left with the truth, but he's completely isolated because the official story denies his reality.
The fantastic is used to critique the historical reality of official lies. It's genius. And that leads to the fatalistic conclusion where the entire town is just wiped off the map.
The massive windstorm that scours Macondo from existence, it feels inevitable.
It is the inevitable conclusion. It's the final consequence of that cyclical history, the colonial exploitation, and the Buendía family's inability to break their self-imposed solitude. Their isolation guarantees their destruction.
So we've covered a staggering amount of ground here, from the immense, stressful solitude GGM endured while writing, to the debate over translation and the crucial nuance of that word, canosery.
And then into the deeply layered political commentary in the magical realism, from the cycle of names to the denial of the Banana Massacre.
And this book's influence is just as strong today. For anyone interested, there's that long-awaited Netflix adaptation.
Yeah, produced by GGM's sons, 16 episodes, all in Spanish, filmed in Colombia. It premiered on December 11th, 2024, which just confirms the enduring global power of this masterpiece.
Okay, so now for a final thought for you to mull over. This comes straight from the closing pages. The very last Buendía, Aureliano, he finally deciphers these ancient parchments.
The ones left by the gypsy Melchiades.
Right, and he realizes they contain the entire pre-written history of his family and Macondo. Every single fortune and misfortune was predicted, and as he reads the very last line, Macondo is erased forever by the wind.
So if their entire history, 100 years of tragedy and love and war, was just a text to be deciphered, something that was always destined to happen, what does that say about historical inevitability?
That realization that everything was fated before it was even lived. That's the profound, inescapable final solitude that GGM leaves you with. Something to consider as you dive into